Forensic investigative techniques and technologies have come a long way in recent years, thanks to the hard work of scientists, researchers, and genealogists. We are closer than ever to cracking open cold cases. Without these advancements in science, many cold cases would have remained just that, cold. Number 5. For over 47 years, Jodie Loomis's family waited for justice to be served. They waited patiently, as hundreds of other families were granted the one thing they longed for: closure. Then, in 2020, the Loomis family received the news that they had been waiting for. The person responsible for taking the life of Jodie was finally due to stand trial, and justice was finally about to be served. On August 23, 1972, 20-year-old Jodie jumped on her bike and rode from her home in Mill Creek, Washington, to the nearby stables to see her horse. A passerby found Jodie's body on Penny Creek Road and immediately called the police. Jodie had been shot once before being left on the side of the road. She did not survive her injuries, and the investigation was kickstarted straight away. Despite the best efforts of the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office, Jodie's case quickly ran cold. This was a time before DNA, and the police had very little to work with. The Snohomish County Sheriff's Office and Jodie's family never gave up on their hunt for justice. Jodie's family campaigned fiercely to keep her name in the media, and begged anyone with information to come forward. Then, in 2018, the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office turned to forensic genealogy experts in the hopes that the new techniques could defrost this cold case. On August 23, 1972, Jodie had been wearing her sister's boots, and when these were later analyzed, a DNA profile of an unknown male was found on them. The forensic genealogical experts took this DNA sample and uploaded it to the public genealogy site GEDmatch. Months passed with little news, but then all of a sudden, there was a match. From here, the genealogist began building a family tree, investigating every lead down to its end. After months of hard work, the forensic genealogists named Terrence Miller as their suspect. All they had to do now was obtain a DNA sample from Miller to confirm he was responsible. An undercover task force was set to the task of surveying Miller and obtaining a DNA sample through a technique called a trash pull. This technique allows officers to seize items from a suspect's trash that will yield a DNA profile. The most common items collected are cigarette butts, bottles, and cups. Luckily for them, Miller was staying at the Tulip Resort Casino in Seattle, Washington at the time of his surveillance. The undercover officers were able to collect coffee cups that he had thrown out, which were sent to the Washington State Crime Lab. The Snohomish County Sheriff's Office waited patiently until finally the Washington State Crime Lab had finished their report. They concluded that Terrence Miller's DNA matched the DNA found at the body of Jodie Loomis in August of 1972. Miller was subsequently arrested and charged with first-degree murder. He posted $1 million bail shortly after being arrested, and was a free man during his trial. Sadly, justice will never fully be served, as Terrence Miller took his own life shortly after his conviction. Number 4. On May 25, 2003, a hiker making their way through the Shady Rest campground in Mammoth Lakes National Forest, California, made a shocking discovery. The hiker discovered human skeletal remains scattered amongst a shallow grave. A coroner and forensic anthropologist worked side by side in order to establish a cause of death, and to find out more information about the remains. They were able to discern that the remains belonged to a 20 to 40-year-old woman, between 4'4" and 5 feet. They also discovered that she was Zapotec after mitochondrial DNA analysis showed that she was a perfect match to one of 200 samples taken from the Valley of Oaxaca in Mexico. Her case was the first in criminal history to use forensic isotope testing, which can determine where a person spent their time, This test revealed that the woman had likely been born and raised in Southern California or northern Mexico, and that in her adult life, she's likely to have moved to southern Mexico. With so much information about the victim, the Mammoth Lakes Police Department believed that they had an open and shut case. Little did they know that they would wait almost 2 decades to find out the identity of Jane Doe. In place of her real name, she was called the Mammoth Lakes Jane Doe, a name she carried until August of 2021. The only other evidence investigators had to work with were the clothes and belongings that were found with their Jane Doe. She was found wearing size 1 cropped denim spandex pants with a lace-up front, black socks, size 5 blue leather brass brand shoes, and a Cold Air brand coat. During the autopsy, the coroner noted that Jane Doe had given birth at least once in her life, and that her teeth were in poor condition. It was added that she likely had little to no access to dental care, and that she was also missing a tooth on her right front side. As years passed, the case of the Mammoth Lakes Jane Doe grew colder and colder. Despite numerous appeals, no one came forward with information that helped to crack the case. Then in 2021, the Mammoth Lakes Police Department utilized cutting-edge DNA technology to help in the identification of their Jane Doe. Finally, in August of 2021, the County of Mono Office of the District Attorney released an official statement stating that 30-year-old Isabel Sanchez Bernal from Puebla, Mexico, had been identified as Jane Doe. They also announced that 47-year-old Diego Santiago Hernandez Antonia had been arrested for the murder of Bernal. Both law enforcement offices have declined to comment on the circumstances of Diego's arrest, and all that we know is that he's currently being held without bail at the Mono County Jail. Number 3. August 27, 1981 was said to be the biggest day of 27-year-old Cynthia Miller's life. That was the day that she was set to marry her fiancé, Gary O'Neill, and afterwards the couple would begin their new life together. On August 26th, Cynthia busied herself with last-minute preparations and tasks to help soothe her anxiety about the big day. Cynthia worked as a school teacher in the Raleigh County school system, and her soon-to-be husband, Gary, worked as a police officer at the Leicester Police Department. One student told newspapers, quote, "She cared enough to spend lunch breaks after school. Whenever we needed her, she would help. It didn't matter whether you had Converse shoes or crosscutters. All that stuff didn't matter to her." By all accounts, the two were a wonderful couple, and they were ready to start their lives with each other. On the evening of August 26, 1981, Gary went to visit his dad in Princeton ahead of the big day. Gary placed multiple calls to Cynthia, but each time the phone rang out and went unanswered. This concerned Gary, and he left his father's house and went to the home they shared on Miller Street. When Gary stepped into the house at around midnight, he found his wife deceased from 4 gunshot wounds. The police were called to the scene, and initially, Gary was considered a suspect. However, after speaking to Gary's father and collecting evidence, he was cleared of any involvement. Gary worked tirelessly with police to help capture the person responsible for taking the life of his wife. Little did Gary know that he was about to embark on a 39-year hunt for justice. For decades, the police chased down any lead to its end, with Raleigh County prosecutor Kristen Keller telling Metro News, quote, "I always call them simmering cases. They're never really cold. Those original detectives are still around, and I've worked with them for many years. They never forget what happened to Cynthia Miller, and it's haunted them." Then in 2020, the Raleigh County Prosecutor's Office made a stunning announcement. Newspapers and stations across West Virginia lit up with reports that a suspect in the case of Cynthia Miller had finally been apprehended. 64-year-old Earl James Robbins was indicted on charges of first-degree murder, along with 4 other felony counts. At the time he was indicted for Cynthia's murder, Robbins was incarcerated at the Chowchilla, California Valley State Prison for another violent crime. According to news reports, Robin admitted that on the day of the crime, he had spoken to Gary. Robbins claims that Gary came over to his house to talk to him about an unpaid parking ticket, and that afterward, he saw Gary speaking to a woman. In a statement, Robbins said, quote, "I never asked who she was. There was no reason to do so. I said I'll take care of the ticket. No animosity, no bad words between me and him." He also told investigators that he heard what had happened to Cynthia by word of mouth and that he had nothing to do with it. Robbins appeared in court in early 2020 and pleaded not guilty to the 5 felony charges against him. As he's currently incarcerated in California, West Virginia are seeking extradition so that he can stand trial. The case against Robbins is ongoing, and the extradition is expected to occur at some point this year. Cynthia's sister, Diana Jones, told WSAZ, quote, "He needs to get his soul right and get forgiveness for what he has done, because my family has." Number 2. November 30th, 2010 started like any other for 64-year-old Sherry Black of Salt Lake City, Utah. Sherry went about her normal routine and opened up the B&W Billiards and Books shop that she owned in Salt Lake City. According to friends and family, Sherry had a keen interest in books from being a child and used this passion to start up her own bookstore. Sherry was well known for her collection of rare and unusual books and her ability to source even the most obscure titles. When Sherry's family went to check on her at the bookstore, they discovered her laying on the floor with the Man's Armani Exchange 36 to 38 inch size belt beside her. DNA from an unknown person was also collected from the crime scene, but police were unable to make a match. Sherry's family was devastated by the news and appealed to anyone with information to come forward, and even offered a $250,000 reward for information that led to an arrest. Years passed, and Sherry's family never gave up hope that the person responsible would soon be facing justice. In 2020, 29-year-old Adam Derboro was arrested at his home in Orem, Utah by the Unified Police Department. Investigators revealed that in 2017, they partnered with Parabon Nanolabs to create a snapshot of what the suspect may look like. After evaluating leads and tips, a DNA sample was taken from Derboro in early 2020, which came up as a match to the DNA found at the Sherry Black crime scene. Following his arrest, Derboro admitted to the crime and was subsequently charged with murder and is being held without bail. Number 1. In December of 1977, hunters walking along Highway 613 and Interstate 10 in Jackson County, Mississippi, discovered the skeletal remains of an African-American woman. Investigators noted that the woman was small and had a distinctive gold tooth, and hoped that these features would make her easily identifiable. Sadly, it would be almost 43 years before the woman, known as Eskatapa Jane Doe, got her real name back. Police scoured records and missing persons reports, hoping to find someone that matched the description of their Jane Doe, but they came up empty-handed. Numerous media appeals were launched to help find the identity of Jane Doe and her killer, but few leads trickled in over the years. It wasn't until 2018 that the Jackson County Sheriff's Office got their first big break. Infamous serial killer Samuel Little confessed to killing the Eskatapa Jane Doe, but told investigators he didn't know her name. After receiving this break in the case, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, along with the Mississippi State Crime Lab, worked with Othram Inc. to use new emerging forensic technologies. According to the Othram's website, they used, quote, forensic-grade genome sequencing to build a comprehensive genealogical profile from the skeletal remains. From here, genealogists tracked down a 93-year-old from LeFlore County, Mississippi. After further analysis, the 93-year-old woman was found to be the cousin of Clara Birdlong, who disappeared sometime in the 1970s. Kin SMP rapid familial testing was performed, and it was concluded that the Eskatapa Jane Doe was missing Clara Birdlong. Finally, after decades of laying in an unmarked grave, Clara Birdlong was finally given her identity back, and her family was given some semblance of closure. While we know who Eskatapa Jane Doe is, we're still on the hunt for the person responsible. Samuel Little is the prime suspect in her case, however, though he's passed away without ever giving investigators more information to definitively connect him to the crime. If you have any information, you're asked to contact the Jackson County Sheriff's Office at 228-769-3063 or the Mississippi Crime Stoppers at 877-787-5898. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.